Good morning and welcome. My name is Paige and I'll be moderating today's discussion for the Government of Alberta's FASD Cross-Ministry Committee. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's FASD webcast, part of a monthly series of webcasts on issues relating to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. This webcast is part of an FASD Cross-Ministry Committee's initiative and a 10-year FASD strategy to provide accessible educational sessions that cover a broad range of topics that are accessible to all Albertans. For more information about this series, check your emails for our regular updates or go to csslearningseries.ca. Or you can follow us on Twitter at AlbertaCSS. We are having an exciting discussion lined up today where we hope to address some of the major questions we've heard over the last year around persons with FASD and navigating the justice system. To help us dive into these topics, we've brought in two panelists with a wealth of knowledge on this complex topic. With the help of our two panelists, we're going to take the time to explore topics like the special needs of individuals with an FASD within the justice system and the importance of getting assessments done when an individual is incarcerated. As always, you will be able to pose your questions to our panelists via our live chat, which is just below your video window. We will address as many of these questions as we can during the question and answer period at the end of the panel. Let's start off today's session with some introductions. Donna Kristiansen is a registered social worker who became involved with the FASD world 20 years ago in various capacities. She came to the Northwest Central Network 5 years ago in the capacity of key worker supporting adults diagnosed or suspected of having FASD. Since 2015, Donna has had the position of program manager. Sharon Pearcey is currently a registered social worker nearing the completion of her Bachelor of Social Work. She has a keen interest in FASD and came to the NWC FASD network 2.5 years ago as clinic coordinator. Nicole is our online moderator. She'll pose your web chat questions to our guests. Today's session is also being recorded and video will be posted on the Alberta FASD webpage after the live recorded. All right, well, let's get started, ladies. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. And perhaps we can start with a bit more of information about what you guys are doing in relation to the Northwest Central Network. So Donna, maybe let's start with you. How are you involved in the Northwest Central FASD Network?
As a program manager, part of my role is supervision of our adult programs. We have a West Zone key worker, a Central Zone key worker, First Nation PCAP, and also I do program collaboration with our partners, whether it be one of the programs that I'm collaborating right now is with the Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation.
Wow, fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about the importance that you see of the justice system sort of understanding FASD?
In my experience, with our network's experience, the importance of understanding is that many of our individuals that go through the justice system have some major struggles. And what we find is the court system doesn't necessarily recognize FASD. It's brain damage, so therefore it's not visible. So they may be taking somebody at face value and seeing some of their actions as being intentional when it could be that it's just that they're not able to understand. When I'm talking about that, it's more like breaches and failure to appear, and it's like they might be assumed that they just didn't care or had something better to do that day, and when in reality it could be something to do with memory and not remembering that they had a court appearance or lack of transportation, maybe unable to phone because they don't have a phone, things like that.
Right.
So it's really important that the system recognize. It's also in regards to the cost to the individual being incarcerated when there may be alternate measures, and the fact of the repeat offender, the cost to society.
Right. I'm really interested in chatting more about that, but first let's introduce Sharon. And can you tell me a little bit about your role within the Northwest Central FASD network?
Yes, of course. As clinic coordinator, I'm primarily involved with the preclinic processes. So, I'll do the screening of applications, look for prenatal alcohol, talk with the birth moms, set up all the clinic scheduling for our adult and our pediatric clinics. And then I also do the follow-up with our youth and children from our pediatric clinics afterwards to make sure that the families are clearly supported with community supports.
Right. And what are some of the struggles that you have seen for people with FASD as they're trying to navigate the justice system?
I think that the biggest thing is that the justice system isn't an easy thing for an individual with an FASD to navigate. Many people always assume that, they come into contact as an offender, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they're there as a victim, sometimes a witness to a crime, sometimes there's family matters, civil matters. Traditional justice practices assume that individuals understand the link between appropriate behavior and the consequences, and of course that's not the case, right? So it's always important to remember that FASD is a brain injury and that many of our clients, for the most part, don't understand that legal jargon. They have a difficult time understanding the nature of criminal proceedings, also find it extremely difficult to effectively communicate with legal counsel and justice personnel.
Right. And that kind of ties into the next question that I was going to ask you, Donna, is can you speak a little bit to how an individual with FASD transitions into adulthood in relation to the justice system, perhaps with some of that jargon and dealing with it on the whole?
Well, I think transitioning into adults in itself is such a huge challenge for someone who is suspected or has FASD. And when we look at issues as budgeting, managing, whether it be an apartment, employment, things like that. And sometimes some of those issues of transitioning actually that's how they end up in the justice system.
Right.
An example that we had is a gentleman that he was charged for theft. But what it was is he was stealing a jar of peanut butter because he was hungry. And so some people like that are going through the system for theft, for things like that. So so those are some of the challenges that we see, and then, like Sharon said, with the language, and it all comes to the executive functioning may be impacted. So poor decision making, poor memory, and things like that.
Interesting. Well, and I know that you gave that example sort of the peanut butter, but do you have any other specific examples of where a special need or perhaps a misunderstanding led to a stumbling block within the justice system?
There's lots of times it's like a fight or flight response, and so we had an instance, rather than kind of being the fall guy, so admitting to a crime that they never committed, just to be able to, they thought, well, if I just say I did it, I can go home and everything will be over.
Right.
And then, of course, that's not the case, and they end up getting, charged and going through the process.
Sharon, do you have any examples like that to share?
Yeah, I do. Many of our clients have expressive and receptive language delays. They talk a really good talk, so they're often, their level of competency and understanding is often, misunderstood, right? Memory impairments, they also cause our clients to experience struggles. There's a tendency for them to blend fictional and actual experiences, inadvertently, of course. It's also important to understand that they have a poor concept of time. That interferes with their ability to give a true account of time and sequences. So often there's some difficulties if they're called as a witness, right? And, because they have that poor concept of time, they're often, they look like, they're a distorter of the truth, right? So it really sheds them in a poor light, I think, at times. So yeah, these are just a few of the struggles, that an individual has to, places them at risk to being evaluated negatively within the justice system. Police officers, the lawyers and judges, they need to really understand that these and other complex elements of FASD create understandings. They can also have a significant impact on the outcomes that an individual with an FASD experiences in the justice system.
And it sounds like you guys know what's happening, what the stumbling blocks are. What are some of the creative solutions or ways to overcome those obstacles? What have you seen, or what are some suggestions that you have?
Well, I kind of have a story about one of our projects that started years ago. It actually started with the Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation. They had a justice committee, and in collaboration with Yellowhead Tribal Community Corrections Services, at the time, and this is, I think, back in like in like 2002, 2003 that it started, where the judges are starting to recognize what's going on here. This individual is standing before me over and over and over again. And they started asking those questions. And it ended up that from that stemmed that the judges were starting to receive some training on FASD through our network. Our network was contacted and we started to go in there to provide the training. From that idea, we had the Justice Protocol Committee that takes place in Stony Plain, where judges and court workers, lawyers come together with network community members, and they start to collaborate. And some of the things that came out of that were simplified bail conditions, simplified sentencing, things like that. So it was in plain language, so that the individuals that were appearing before court had a better understanding. From that, it stemmed that the court started to have court assessments. And so it wasn't your facts assessments, but it was an FASD assessment if that was suspected. And that was great because individuals were starting to come through for assessments. But then the question was, now what? So they have an assessment. What difference is that going to make? And from that stemmed what we call the Youth with Complex Needs, which we received some funding for. And so that was a mentor that was able to, a mentor from the community that was able to attend court and be able to liaison with the court for the individual. So when this person would be charged or would appear, then they were referred to the Kind Heart mentor. And she would help them access some of those services that they have never accessed before. And that is a variety of whether it be medical, whether it be any type of financial support, because many didn't have the ability to know how, if they were eligible for financial support or how they could attain that. Right. And so, and also for those things, of those reminders, whether it's a text message to say, you know, you've got court such and such a time, and it could be that she would provide the transportation if they needed transportation. So in that court system, which is in Mayerthorpe, they're very well informed, and they use the mentor very often and be able to have that collaboration.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Wow. Sharon, do you have any other examples of creative solutions or things that you've seen that have worked well in overcoming stumbling blocks within the system?
I think with increased understanding and awareness that communication, you know, with justice personnel, I think is so key, especially the frontline workers like the police officers, because they're the first contact with individuals with an FASD, you know, so just raising awareness with them, excuse me. I think it's important for, you know, police officers to ask those questions, those important questions with individuals, you know, is there a mentor, right? Is there somebody that we can call, right? That would really help them to navigate things, you know, court workers, same thing, you know, are so essential for our clients. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to sort of shift the topic to assessments and the importance and benefits of those. Sharon, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main benefits with having an assessment, and particularly for those who are incarcerated, is when clients go through an FASD assessment, there's always recommendations that come with that. You know, so of course, part of that would obviously be a release plan, which is, I feel, is so important. When we were talking earlier about relationships, right? You know, it's so important. So part of that release plan, you know, could include bringing in that parole officer, that probation officer, bringing in the client's natural supports, the community supports, working on that relationship prior to release so that, you know, they're able to go into the community supported.
Donna, what are your thoughts on that?
Also, some of the challenges we found with assessments that would be completed while somebody was incarcerated would be that that it depends on the duration of the incarceration. And so sometimes it's been that we've arranged it, and which is challenging because, I mean, there's a lot of security and different measures that need to occur.
Right.
And typically, before we are able to get in there, the individual's released.
Right.
But in other instances, when we are able to, I mean, part of the challenge that we have with assessments is being able to locate the individual. Like our clients, they might be transient. They might be couch surfing. They might, you know, poverty is an issue, so they may not have a phone or minutes on the phone to be able to have that contact. And so it's a challenge to be able to, that they say they're going to be where they are and able to transport to assist them to get that assessment. So when they're incarcerated, it's like they're like a captive audience, and it's so sometimes it's beneficial if we can get in there.
Right. And it sounds like, some of the help is in place, and it's getting those people that help. And I guess that brings me to my next question, Sharon, about the importance of the openness for people within the justice system to be open to working with FASD individuals. Can you kind of speak a little bit to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although there's been some progress, with having the justice system open up to FASD workers, there's still a lot of work to do. By having the justice system open up to the workers, this brings immense benefits not only to the offenders with FASD, but this can also influence some policy changes for the creation of FASD-specific sentencing alternatives, as Donna said, and also programming while they're incarcerated. To have them open up to FASD workers, we also have the opportunity to educate the corrections workers, justice personnel in general. Currently, most programming in correctional institutes are mostly based on, higher functioning individuals who don't have memory impairments or language impairments, right? So that makes it really difficult. Some of our clients have real difficulties with reading, writing. There's memory impairments. Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what we can be doing when someone is incarcerated, when they are in the justice system. But what happens if they're released out into the community and there aren't supports sort of after the fact in place? What are some of the things that could happen then?
Well, often if our clients aren't supported before they're released, they come out of prison and they don't have any financial means. They don't know where they're going to be living. They end up living, either on the streets or in unsafe living conditions, which of course increases the risk of reoffending, right? So, it's really important to have that mentor support to really reduce the risk of reoffending.
Right.
Yeah, and to keep them safe.
What are your thoughts on that, Donna?
Yeah, I agree with that the fact that it's a cycle. So without the supports, that they end up back into the system rather quickly. Like I can't express mentors
Right.
is so key, and we're very fortunate within our zones when they have that relationship that our mentors, if they're connected to a mentor, then that mentor travels with them to court and assists with helping navigate that whole system. But there's other areas where that isn't occurring, and so that's what we would like to see, is to be able to have some type of court liaison
Right.
in the system, so that they can help connect right there to services, which makes a huge difference. I mean, when we look at the rate of recidivism and how it reduces with having that mentor. I ran into a gentleman actually yesterday, and we were supporting him through courts, and he said like it's been 2 years since he hasn't been there, where it was like a cycle that he was going through. So that's a celebration.
That's fantastic. Wow. And I know we're almost ready for our question and answer period, but before we get into that, do you have any, that's an amazing success story. Do you have any other success stories that you could share with us?
We find that anybody that is connected with a mentor, that when they're going through the justice system, it does make a huge difference. And not only it's the rate that they're not going to court as often, but because they've been accessing some of those services, financial supports, looking at somebody assisting them with housing, somebody assisting with just managing their life, that the reasons that they're going into court are reduced as well. Like some of the basic things like breaches. Even when we have a reduction in breaches, it makes a huge difference.
Wow. Sharon, do you have any success stories to share?
No, I really would just like to emphasize what Donna has said, right? And sometimes those successes are small. Yeah, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. No, thank you.
Great. That's great. So I'll hand it over to Nicole to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Do we have any FASD courts in Canada, particularly in Alberta, that are doing the mentorship that you're talking about?
We have one in Marithorpe, is where we have, that's through Yellowhead Tribal Community Corrections Services, and they have a mentor in the Marithorpe court, and also in Morinville, I believe. Because through YTCCS, as far as I know that they have through those two communities of the Alexis Nakota Sioux and the Alexander.
Great.
What can family and friends of people with FASD do to help the courts understand what's going on?
They can appear, like say if someone goes to meet with duty counsel, for example, is that they have support with them that's able to, if there's an assessment that has been completed, that they are able to, speak to, on behalf of that individual or with that individual at duty counsel to explain the situation, and that that individual may have some brain damage. And so once that information is out there, like I say, whether it be a court worker or that they just start looking through that FASD lens and recognize that there's more to it than just that they just didn't, that they're there for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And last question, is there any misperceptions that you were mentioning cops that they don't understand about FASD?
Well, with the RCMP in our network, that's another huge thing is that we're doing training. It's a lunch and learn.
Oh.
So we go to the different precincts, and we've gone, I think, to almost every precinct in our network region. And we do a lunch and learn, and we have somebody from the Solicitor General, Del August, assists us, and because he's able to do the cop talk, and and we have the lunch and learn to be able to provide FASD awareness.
Fantastic. And how can people get more information if they have any questions for you guys after this session?
We have our website, which is www.nwcfasd.ca.
Yes.
And I believe that all of our contact information is on there. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining us and generously sharing your experience and insights. And to all of you who've tuned into this session, we're grateful that you spent this time with us and that you found the conversation informative and helpful. As we mentioned in the opening, this webcast is part of the Government of Alberta's Community and Social Services Learning Series, which will be running around the same time each month through June 2017. This series covers topics from fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, like the one you saw today, but also has a series developed by the Employment First Initiative, the Alberta Brain Injury Initiative, and the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. To get updates and registration information about each of these sessions, please email us at fasd@gov.ab.ca. That's fasd@gov.ab.ca, and ask to be added to our mailing list. As mentioned, today's webcast was recorded and the video will be posted online, along with videos from all the previous webcasts. The video link will be sent out to all registrants in the near future. We encourage you to share this video with anyone you think may be interested. If you have feedback about today's webcast, please email us at fasd@gov.ab.ca and let us know. We'd love to hear your ideas. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you next month. Thanks so much.